Good morning. Welcome to another of our expert interviews. Before we begin, I'd just like to say thank you to all of you who have seen the previous ones and given us some wonderful feedback. Today we are speaking with Roland Maichin. He is the head of project development and lead process engineer at ZETA. My first interaction with Roland was in 2014 when he actually visited India together with Andreas Markler. And at that time, I got a very first glimpse into the kind of technical knowledge that exists within the company. It was very impressive, and I continue to be impressed to this day. Roland, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
So, Roland, you've got something for us today. What is it?
Yes, here I got my magnifying glass. This reminds me of always staying curious and always have a look on the latest developments in biotech industry and trying to anticipate what might come next. It also represents our attitude of getting a deep understanding of all the aspects and details that are necessary to accomplish a biotech project.
And you look a little bit like Sherlock Holmes with that.
Yes, indeed. And it helps when you're getting older.
So, Roland, I like to talk about beginnings. So, can we talk about your beginning, your background and experience till now?
Well, I'm a process engineer by training. I had my education at the Technical University at Graz. During my master thesis, I had my focus on nanotechnology, which was supposed to be the next big thing in the 90s of the last century. But then during my first job at an engineering company, I got in contact with biotechnology and I was fascinated by the prospects and the potential of this new technology. So I stick to this field. Later in 2006, I joined ZETA. Here was responsible at first to set up the new process engineering department in Vienna. Later then, in 2011, this was the time when we made the first large upstream projects. I found a role as a lead process engineer for large bioreactor and fermenter projects. Then in 2016, I set up a new department, which was called Project Development, which acts as a first point of contact, as an interface between ZETA and the customers in the sales phase.
So that's a lot of experience you've had within ZETA. What's also interesting for me is that you've been here since 2006. So you've seen many changes in the company. 2011, we had new ownership, new management. So you've also seen kind of that phase. I'd like to talk a little bit more about what you mentioned, project development and customers. So you and your team are involved in the beginning phase, the interaction with customers. Can you talk a little bit more about what you've seen in your experience and interaction with customers? What kind of challenges do you encounter during your conversations with them?
Yeah, the most important phase when starting a new collaboration or a new project is always the beginning. And the project development team is the team that has the first contact to the customer when it comes to technical topics. So project development means to develop a common understanding with our customers about the content, the scope, the interfaces, and the execution strategy of a project. So this is quite a critical step because this dialogue between the ZETA engineers and the customers team has to be conducted in a very limited time span, which is usually foreseen for the tendering phase. And all the information gathered in this phase will form the basis for our quotation and later on for the execution of the project. So one thing we learned, a project which is started under unclear conditions is most likely to end up in a mess.
Yeah, I really like how you've explained and described that because my experience in ZETA is very similar. So, in the beginning phases, me and the sales team were involved working with your team in conversation and dialogue with customers. And I also find that it's very important to have a common understanding, especially because when we're handing over the project to the project execution team, that common understanding then helps the next team to actually build on that basis and that strong foundation. So I really like how you've explained and described it. But what I would want you to speak a little bit more now, Roland, is on specifically on customers. What do you think the benefits are for customers, and how do they benefit from our approach and our way of doing business?
Yeah, well, as I said, I joined ZETA in 2006. This was the time when ZETA evolved from a pipe fitters company into a manufacturer of process kits, actually. During the last 15 years, we made some huge steps when we developed expertise and capacity in all the areas of competence which are necessary to process a project from process engineering to mechanical to manufacturing automation to commissioning and verification. So this is what we call this one-stop shop concept, actually. Later on, we established deeper expertise in concept engineering and in scaling up of process equipment. So we were able to execute projects from concept to commissioning, actually. The projects grew bigger and bigger, and we established tools and an environment for project management and engineering. So we grew in manpower and in expertise. More recently, our customers asked us for even more integration into their projects. Since we covered all the aspects of the process facility until then, which is still the core of the facility, of course, that's what it's all about. We now deal with all the peripheral systems, like the clean utilities, the black utilities, clean room design, HVAC engineering, civil engineering, as well as building services. So we are a one-stop supermarket, actually.
So what you're basically saying is that in addition to the core engineering experience we have, the core process knowledge, it's also about how that integrates with the rest of the facility. And together we are able to deliver to customers a very comprehensive solution covering both aspects. This is also what I've experienced in ZETA, so I do agree with your answer. Roland, can you talk a little bit now about the future? So what do you see happening in the biopharma industry? What is your vision, and what do you see the next few years like, also in terms of project development?
Yeah, well, actually, the world we live in is prone to quite a few threats and challenges, and I guess technology might help at least to solve some of them. And we as an engineering company, we have the capacity and we have the know-how to help in certain aspects. Especially biotechnology has developed strongly in the last years, and I guess this will go on for the next decades. So genetic engineering gives us so many capabilities and possibilities. And we see so many startups pop up driven by venture capital. And especially these startups are important customers for us. Yeah, they bring new ideas and new technologies to the industry and to the world. We have to treat these startups very carefully, since these young and small companies may be killed by even one wrong decision. And this is why we consult them very carefully and try to guide them in a structured way, step by step, from their lab to pilot to commercial scale. You know, when we meet these startups, they usually have a 2-liter scale bioreactor at hand, and they dream about a production facility with like 20,000 tons per year. So this is why we see them as customers of our future, and we support them on their way and provide them with the necessary equipment, and once they're ready for, we provide them with the necessary production facility.
I'm sure these startups and customers are in good hands with you and your team, given all the experience and knowledge you have developed over the years. Roland, thank you for your time and your answers. It's been very fascinating to learn. Would you also like to answer a few questions about yourself now?
Yes, why not?
Rolly, ready to answer 10 questions?
Yes.
Okay, let's start. Winter or summer?
Well, actually, I don't want to miss either. I like the cycle of seasons because it reminds me of the cycle and volatileness of life.
If you could, in whose footsteps would you like to spend a day and why?
Well, if it was only for a day, I would go with my dog. I think he's the champion in relaxed living.
What did you want it to be when you grew up?
An inventor, but rather Daniel Düsentrieb style.
Soccer or chess?
Well, I'm not a good soccer player actually, but sport's important to keep me in balance. Nevertheless, since chess is the new Fortnite, I practice as well.
What qualities does a good project developer need?
Empathy and curiosity to understand the customer's needs and put them into the design of his facility.
Any advice for a good work-life balance?
Set the right priorities.
You are cooking for your friends. What's for dinner?
Well, I'm not a good cook actually. I'd put some piece of meat on the grill.
Who's the person you admire the most and why?
Maybe it's Bojan Slat and his ocean cleanup venture. Hopefully he's a representative of a new generation tackling the issues of the planet in a constructive and straight way.
Vintage or luxury car?
Well, actually my daily driver is a 1981 Chevrolet Malibu, which is, considering the actual gas prices, a luxury car.
Which technical invention are you particularly waiting for?
I'm an engineer. I don't wait for inventions. I rather drive them.
Thank you very much.
It was a good pleasure.
Thank you very much for being with us and watching this interview. We hope you will also join us in the next interview as part of the expert interview series. Thank you again.